Welcome to the Subconscious Mind Mastery Podcast. Thomas Miller, thank you so much for joining us. I've got something that is going to be interesting today. It could ruffle some feathers. It could be a little prickly for some. For others, I think you're going to be cheering it on. You're going to be, oh my gosh, this needs to be said. I don't know. You never know when we launch into these things, but hopefully there's something here that will speak to all of us, and I think the way that we're going to wrap it up will be significant for living our highest timeline and beating to our own drum, not the drum of others. First thing I'd like to let everybody know is that my cousin Lynn, who I did a podcast on recently, passed away. She left us July 3rd, and very quickly, as I thought about it, she left in exactly the same way as what we talked about. She was not going to experience pain. Lynn was not at all a religious person, and her spirituality preferred Buddhism, the theme of which, of course, is the end of suffering. And that's exactly what she did. This woman was incredible. Oh, I'm going to miss her so much. But the family gathered. My cousin from Tampa and her husband came in. Lynn's daughter was there. I was able to be there right after she passed, and just a special time of friends, family for several days as we took on the reality that this person who has been in our lives, all of our lives, is no longer going to be in our lives. Hard pill to swallow with everything else that's gone on in my family this year, but these are the times, and I'm just taking it. Well, it almost, not really, parlays into this thing that I'm going to talk about today, but it does open a lot of questions just about purpose and what in the world is going on, etc., etc. So let me tell you what I was thinking here is I've been reading a lot of news stories since, I guess the middle of June, somewhere in there when this broke, of a lot of pastors, Protestant, mostly Southern Baptist, or otherwise fundamentally skewed churches, pastors and associate pastors are being kicked out of their ministries because of moral failures, shall we say. Many of you may not be aware of this, so I'll just drop a few names. You can do research here. I'm not going to go into details. Robert Morris, pastor of Gateway Church in Dallas, Fort Worth, actually in Southlake, which is out by the DFW airport, was really the big one to fall when this blog, the Wartburg Report, published a story from a victim of his back in 1982. Now, this story has a lot of tangents, and I'm not going to go into it, but basically, she was 12, he was 20, early 20s, married with a child, and he was physically abusing this pastor's daughter, this child of 12 years old. He had admitted to moral failures growing up, but he didn't disclose the age. So he was kicked out. Another one you can look up, Dr. Tony Evans, also a Dallas pastor, very conservative, big media ministry. He's out. There's a long list of these over the last about 90 days as this is being recorded in mid-July 2024. Another one that kind of triggered like, okay, I need to pull this together and do something on this. Just overnight, Stonebriar Community Church, Frisco, Texas. This is the church where I met my second wife, the doctor. Chuck Swindoll was the founder of this. Chuck has a huge radio ministry. He's 89 years old. He just handed over the reins of Stonebriar to this new minister on May 1st of this year, 2024, and now it comes out that one of their staff members, in a very hush-hush email to church members, was relieved of his duty due to moral failures. If you'd like to look up more on this, you could check out Amy Smith on Twitter. She is doing a lot of work about this. Dee Parsons is one of the co-writers of this Wartburg Watch, Wartburg Watch. That's the blog. Amy Smith also has a blog. You can do plenty of research. There are a lot of stories. It seems to be concentrated around these more fundamental conservative churches. But obviously, this is nothing new. In fact, when we were together memorializing Lynn, being with Lynn as she transitioned, My cousin Janet, we were talking about this because it was in the news, and she talked about improprieties in their Methodist church in Tulsa growing up in the 1960s. So, I mean, to be under the facade that this is nothing new, obviously it is not. It seems of late, at least the last couple of decades, that it has focused on two high-profile denominations, obviously the Roman Catholic priest altar boy situations, and then the Southern Baptist Convention. A couple of years ago, the Southern Baptist Convention itself, the largest Protestant denomination in the United States, did an internal investigation, and they came up with that a number of churches and ministers were contributing to sexually related sins and covering them up. And I'll just say one of the churches mentioned is where one of my family members in Dallas attends. In fact, I know a lot of these churches and the players, either directly or distantly. When when Amy Smith published the Stonebriar News, there was a Dallas Morning News article, and they showed the email to the church members. One of the prominent ministers signing that email was somebody that I knew 30 years ago. He's the executive pastor, I guess, kind of the guy, the COO, if the church had a corporate equivalent. And also that church I just mentioned where a family member attends in Dallas that was covering up some of these sexual issues, their COO, their executive pastor, just abruptly resigned within the past month because the FBI is investigating financial improprieties. So this is the stuff that I was headed into. If you've listened to this podcast and you know the background, I was going to go into the ministry, and I was going to be one of these, and I would have been one of them in the news. I don't have any doubt in my mind that I would not have escaped this. It was the beginning of my second year of college. God love him, God bless his dear soul in heaven. David Brooker came running across the campus, Miller, and asked me to join him doing high school football on the radio. And I was like, oh my goodness. And at the time, I was the kind of an intro or, youth minister at First Baptist Church, Bentonville, on where you don't get paid, you just do it for the experience. So I went back to tell the pastor, who, by the way, probably a couple of years after I left, found out that he was doing the organist. He said that he wanted me to lead high school football rallies for the youth group after the football games on Friday nights, and I couldn't do the broadcasting or both. He said, you have to choose. I chose broadcasting. 1,000 times, 1,000 times, 1,000 times. I am so glad I did. But, when we think about it, and I mean, this is not relegated to churches. The intention of this is not to make churches wrong. Believe me, that's not. I just clicked on a news headline while I was waiting on my computer to do something here in the booth, that some stripper and host of a porn site or something is going to be speaking right before Donald Trump at the next Republican National Convention. I mean, this is everywhere. So the preferred party of these churches where these pastors are falling like dominoes are going to have a stripper speak before their nominee for president of the United States. Is that where we are? So I started thinking about where and why have we gone wrong here. So one article in particular that Amy Smith posted was about this village church in Dallas. Again, I know somebody who attends there, and their pastor is Matt Chandler. If you become a member of Village Church in Dallas, and they have multiple campuses all over the area, supposedly, according to this article, you have to sign what they said is a 5-page agreement of how you will be as a member of Village Church. And a big part of that agreement is that you will submit to the authority of the church, the pastor, and the board of elders. And in particular in this article, was a story of a young couple who got married and were very excited to go overseas and be village church missionaries in some other country. Come to find out he, the husband, has been into child porn since college. All of that came out eventually as they were over in the mission field. They came back, she separated from him, and the church blew a tire when she wanted to annul their marriage. saying that she was doing it before having been under the authority and the counsel of the church and the elder board. So what was their next response? They kicked her out of the church. If you listen to the stuff that happened to me in March, same pattern. There's this, if you don't subscribe the way we do and believe the way we do, we are going to sever all ties with you. It's a sick form of mind control. And that article gave me some points for us to think about, because there is a definite pattern here. And if you are in church and struggling with church, as many I know who listen to this podcast are, I hope that this will expand your thinking a little bit, and just go with me as we explore some of these things and see if you were able to release the grip on the dogmatic perspective that you might be under or your family is putting you under. So many people say the same thing, oh my gosh, I'm struggling with my family, or that you've had the same thing happen in your family that I had in mine, where you're an outcast. Here you have this spiritual perspective that is totally freeing and connecting you with God. Is there anything that we say in here that disconnects you from God or invites Satan or anything else? I would say there's not. If you find it, you tell me what episode it's in and what minute it plays, and I will pull it. Because that is not what this podcast is about. It's not who I'm about, and it's not what the message that I've discovered through escaping all of this is about either. So here was kind of the construct that I developed of how to look at this. First of all, let's look at it through an energy perspective. Through the lens of energy, as Fred Dodson wrote about in the book Levels of Energy. If you look at it from that perspective, and if you have not listened to that book and you want a book that will change your life, as so many have testified, Levels of Energy, I narrated the audiobook. Fred Dodson is the author. Pick it up, and it will definitely illuminate you to a whole different way of looking at the world. But here's one point of structure. When something is not moving to higher ground energetically, that thing is broken and needs to be examined. And that can be anything from a church, a pastor, you, me, the home that we create, the family, etc. If something is not moving higher, then something needs to be examined. Something isn't working. And the other structural point that plays out through this thematically is how you do anything is how you do everything. So as we see, not only from ministry to ministry, how these churches, either structurally, corporately, something is broken, and we need to figure out what that is. And keep in mind, we've lived in this patriarchal protection bubble for centuries. Heck, millennia, really. This has been going on for thousands of years. And this is one of the things that I think is we are at a shifting point where this wall is coming down. If you listen to Fun Astrology, you know we talk about this. It's being indicated in the sky. I mean, talk about the Bible, the wise men, the 3 Persian astrologers who came to the manger scene, they said, we saw the star, we saw the sign. Same thing here. I mean, the sign is in the sky that things are changing. It's been in control for thousands of years. I don't know how long the shift will take, but it does seem that things are happening. And another construct is there seems to be a really sad theme through this, and that is that children are often mentioned and involved. So let's look at a couple of patterns that I pulled out. I wanted to focus on 3. One is control. That this is a system that is built entirely upon control. And that was reflected and just jumped off the page from that Village Church article. The whole thing, I mean, really signing a 5-page document about how you're going to behave if you're going to be a member of this church. And while I do not have any personal experience or knowledge that that document even exists, I'm taking this article's word for it. I do know that the culture of the church that I grew up in is very control-oriented. It's about obeying authority. I mean, that's fine. That's how societies operate, is with authorities and rules, and we follow things and we do things to make things work as humans living together. But this stuff steps way outside the lines. And like I said, if you are in this, or you grew up with it like I did, or you are questioning it or challenging it, I just would really encourage you to take a look, open your eyes, and examine this perspective. Because what I believe now, and the shift that occurred for me, is believing in basically total freedom with no organized institution or elder board, patriarchal elder board, governing you or telling you what to do. And my goodness, if you realized that you had married some guy that the article said she just kind of knew something was off, and then finally it all came out, that you wanted to get out of that marriage and something is trying to hold you in it because getting divorced is bad? Come on. Seriously? What I believe now is that we are all connected to God, and we have a soul that gives us internal guidance. Call it our higher self, call it the subconscious mind, but it is that which is the non-physical part of us that connects to the non-physical authority, if you will, of the universe, God. But it's not God from this dominating, ruling, patriarchal figure that's going to punish you. Instead, it is an energy field that is constructed, that knows the future. It knows the whole, it's not constrained by time. So it sees around the corner. And when you tap into that, it will give you the guidance you need to go along your path. But I'll tell you, if you tried to sell that in any one of these conservative Christian churches, forget about it. Another name, if you want to look up, is Bill Gothard and his ministry. That was something I grew up under. His whole message was about that you are under the authority of God. The man is the authority in the home. Women, you are under your husband, and you must obey your husband the same way that you're supposed to obey God. Children are under the authority of their parents and all of that. And when you extrude that out, read about the Duggar family from Arkansas. Once again, child porn is involved. So if you're finding yourself controlled by this nonsense, then the thing to do is to break free and realize that you and your highest source are your only authority, if you will, and that always gives you choice of what you're going to do. So if you have choice and you can follow the guidance or you can not follow the guidance and live with the consequences, where's the authority in all of that? It was like somebody said to me when I was transitioning through and processing through all of this, really one of the last dominoes for me to fall was somebody said, what if there was no sin? I was like, that was the whole construct that I've grown up in, was sin. Everything was about sin. Everything about this negative sin, like your judgment and sin and condemnation and all of this. And somebody said, what if there was no sin? And that freed me up to look at who ultimately is responsible. Here's some common sense for you. If you're under all this authority, is government corrupt? Are husbands who look at child porn corrupt? Do you want to be under that authority? So the whole thing breaks down when you say, well, then I just followed the authority, but the authority was tainted. The authority was bad. The authority was giving me the wrong. So it's not my fault. I followed the authority like I'm supposed to do. You see how the whole thing is a trap? I'm going to roll this directly into a part 2 just to keep the time that we normally do. But here's how I'd like to conclude from this, because a lot of you are saying, oh my gosh, this is exactly where I've been, or this is exactly where my family is, or this is the way that my husband is treating me. If that kind of thing is echoing in your head right now, what I would say to you is stand up, own your own space, beat to your own internal drum, the one that you were born with, the one that you were given, that naturally the design of the construct of how we are made is connected to higher source. From the time you're a child, you know that to be true. Claim your right to your own opinion. If you're in a bad marriage and your soul is screaming to get out of it, get out of it. If you're in a bad business deal, get out of it. If somebody near and close to you is hiding things or not telling the truth or whatever it is, masquerading, stop following it. Let the chips fall, but let them fall on the side of the highest timeline, the side of higher energy, the side of the truth. Yes, there could be some implications. Weigh those out carefully. Go back to your intuition, get the direction from intuition, and follow that. I had a conversation with one of our listeners who's a dear friend, and boy, is she ever just getting empowered right now. I mean, in a dynamic way, and is totally getting this message, and had been living under the oppression, and is now standing up for herself, claiming her own space, claiming her own right, claiming her own way to hear and respond to her own intuition. I was so excited to hear that, and that's what I would suggest to conclude this first point, is this whole thing about control and authority. Look at the outcome that it's having. Is there anything good? Is there anything high energy from all of that? As we move this conversation along in the next section, we'll talk about the freedom and what that would look like if an entire society operated from that kind of higher ground perspective. How wonderful that could be. But remember, everything about leadership and authority is top down. In the structure of these churches, the people, the congregation, respond to the leadership, to the elders and the pastors. And what we've been seeing lately here is another chapter, another flavor, another denomination that is corrupt at the top. The Southern Baptist Convention issued their own report, calling themselves out. I mean, please, if you're in it, examine it and try to break free from it. You have all you need within you, connected to God, connected to highest source, for all the instruction and all of the guidance that you need to live your best life. Really, all you have to do is just step into it. I have 2 more points. Let's examine those in part 2. And I promise when we get to the bottom of this, it will give you some real empowerment to enjoy the journey. I'll see you in the next episode.